Yeah, hi, this is Mark from An American in Russia. Excuse me if it's a little shaky today. It's also very bright. I don't have a tripod with me. I'm in Moscow, and behind me is Vnukovo Airport, one of the one, two, three, four big airports that surround Moscow. It's kind of a fitting backdrop because airplane plays part of my next story. The episode is called Drinking Etiquette in Russia. And no, this is not going to be about drunk Russians or anything of that nature. It's that there are certain rules that most people here do follow. Russia, then and now. Let's go back to 2000, 2001. My first trip to Russia. I was about to come here. And when I came here, I was going to meet my future wife's father for the first time. Figured Russian man, ex-military man. Well, I better learn how to drink vodka if I'm going to not bring shame upon myself or my country. So I worked with my brother. We practiced. He didn't need practice. I did. Bought the worst vodka in the world, maybe $10 for a 1.5 liter bottle. It was terrible, terrible stuff. But I got used to drinking shots of it and working myself up to a fairly acceptable level. Okay, so came time for me to leave and come to Russia. My flight from New York to Moscow was on Aeroflot. And why Aeroflot? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, back in about the year 2000, Aeroflot was the only airline that flew here that you could smoke cigarettes in. Like the last 5 or 6 rows were smoking section, like as if there was like an invisible force field that kept the smoke from going up any further. But anyhow, I wanted to smoke. And number two, on Aeroflot, you could buy a bottle of vodka, not just one of those little teeny bottles. You bought 1/2 liter bottles, and they were like $20. So I sat down in the airplane. My seatmate was a member of the Russian Duma. Now, he also wanted to smoke. That's why he chose one of these back seats in the plane. He didn't understand hardly any English, even though he'd been visiting his daughter in New Jersey for about a month. And my Russian was pretty bad, but he bought us a bottle of vodka. Now, not only just a bottle of vodka, we were not going to just drink vodka. We were going to drink toasts to different things. And he had zakuski. Zakuski would be some food that you should eat with vodka. Could be just bread, could be a pickle, could be lots of things, but you should be eating while you're drinking. So he, like a good Russian, reached into his carry-on bag and he had zakuski with him. So we sat there and did shots to world peace, to our mothers, to the women in our lives, just the normal things that Russians like to do shots to. And my practice that I had really helped me out. I was standing up pretty well to this. I thought, hey, this is great practice. By the time, we finished that bottle of vodka anyhow, and then it was my turn to buy the bottle. So I bought the next bottle. Other Russians were coming down the back of the plane because they wanted to smoke, and while there, why not have a shot of vodka too? So there was quite a party going on the back of this plane. It was a lot of fun. It was Aeroflot. By the time I got to Moscow, I was, I think, the only one who was still awake. The Russian member of the Duma, he had passed out several hours ago. Other Russians around us who had been drinking, they had also passed out several hours ago. So I felt my first test in Russia with drinking, I felt was a great success. Of course, not thinking that now I'm going to be meeting my future father-in-law with vodka breath and pretty shaky after drinking vodka all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. And now it's going to be time for me to head to Pavletsky Vokzal. I'm going to go by metro. Time to head to the Vokzal and then take my train back to Tambov. So maybe I'll talk to you again at the Vokzal. I mentioned in the part of this video where I was in front of the airport that we talk about the rules of vodka drinking. Well, of course there are really no rules, but there are some customs. Now, as a Westerner, if you ever have a chance to attend dinner at a Russian person's private home, jump at that opportunity. It'll be educational and you'll have a great time. Now, if vodka is being served, which is not unusual, there'll be plenty of zakouski on the table. Now, this word is often translated as appetizers or snacks, but typically at a dinner, there may be some maybe salted herring, some pickles, and maybe small pickled tomatoes amongst other items, well, even bread. Usually there's at least some type of bread there. Now, in front of each place at the table will be, well, in addition to other types of utensils, a small shot glass for use with the vodka. There will be a bottle or two on the table, but you don't just grab it willy-nilly. The host will pour the vodka, if they are a male, if not, some other male. At least I've never been to a Russian dinner with mixed company when a female pours the alcohol drinks. Now, I suppose if there are only females present, then, well, I don't know what happens, because if only females being present, I'm a male, so I'm not there to witness this. So for me, it's a big mystery. You can expect a lot of toast throughout the evening, and that is when you drink your vodka. Now, Russian vodka can be quite good and smooth. You need to monitor your intake, trust me. Just know that every time you put down an empty shot glass, that like magic, when you look again, it is full. And I swear, you could be looking right at it and it just becomes full automatically. It's some Russian magic. If every time there's a toast, you down that vodka and you put your glass back down, well, it's going to be refilled each time. So every time you're going to be drinking a shot glass full of vodka. And you'll certainly be on your way to, well, you'll be on your way to being wasted. Now, maybe that's your goal. In that case, go for it. But the way I recommend you to monitor things, if you want to monitor it, is to not drink the whole shot glass each toast. Maybe drink half or even less. So you see, the glass is refilled when it's empty. So this way, you can reduce your intake a bit. Maybe you don't want to, though. I mean, you will be singing songs later and sounding pretty good to yourself. You'll also be chattering away in some form of Russian. At least you will think it is Russian. The toasts will run the gamut, but be sure it will include toasts to the women present and to your parents, for example, for sure. These will be two of the toasts. And I have to tell you, Russians are very good at giving toasts. I mean, when I give a toast, I think I sound like a little sock puppet in comparison to Russians giving a toast. However, the vodka helps with this. By the way, even if you drink perhaps more than you had planned on, Russians don't kick guests to the curb when the night is over. They may order a taxi for you, and if so, they will probably go along for the ride to make sure that you can get into your house. Also, if you drink a fair share of vodka, you start singing songs and speaking make-believe Russian, there will be no judgments, meaning later. Russians are really great hosts, and as I mentioned, if you get invited to their home, by all means, go. Oh, hey, Mark here again. This time I'm in front of Pavletsky Vokzal, which means Pavletsky Railroad Station. See if I can show it to you here. Oh, it's this whole big building behind me. Anyhow, that's where I'm going to be leaving to go back to Tambov. My train will be there in about an hour. Another story. And this didn't take place near a railroad station. I just happened to be here. Russians love picnics, especially back in around 2000. I imagine they still do today. I remember going on my first picnic with some Russian people, my wife and a couple of her friends. And when we got there, her friends were already there, and as soon as they saw drive up, I heard the comment, okay, now we have 3. So, not knowing what they meant, because there were actually 4 of us, I asked my wife, and she explained to me. She said, traditionally, they don't open a bottle of vodka unless they have 3 people there to drink it. When I say a bottle, this was probably half a liter bottle. So that would mean about 150 grams each, a little bit more than that, which is not quite a cup. But part of the reason for that is, I guess, apparently, according to my wife, vodka used to be sold in bottles, but they weren't resealable. They had like a paper cap or something on it. Once you ripped it off, that was it. You had to finish it. So it just became known that it took 3 people to finish that bottle of vodka. That's what they meant by, and then there were 3. So a little bit about that amount, 150 grams, something you'll hear all the time here in Russia, at least back then. Everything seemed to involve what they called 100 gram vodka. 100 gram vodka means 100 grams of vodka. And I mean, it solved anything. If you had a cold, 100 gram vodka, that would help you. Even if you're exposed to nuclear radiation, 100 gram vodka. In that case, I'd want a lot more than 100 gram vodka. I'd want 2-3 liters of vodka to blank myself of what was coming next. I'm going to now tell a quick story which will act as the proper bookend to this episode. I mentioned at the beginning about how I practiced downing shots of vodka, and I seemed to hold up well against native Russians when I got here after my practice. Well, I was served my head on a platter a few years later. I was with my wife visiting some of her relatives. We visited her uncle, or maybe it was even her great uncle. I think he was like in his 80s. Well, he offered me some vodka and sat down to drink with me. Well, this guy was a professional. I lost track of how much we drank, but this was the first and only time since I've been to Russia that my wife and also her cousin had to basically support me all the way to where we were staying. I mean, I don't remember the ride home. And that was, so I remember getting to where we were staying, but that was the last thing I remembered till the next morning. Well, the next day I felt kind of ashamed for getting so wasted, and I apologized profusely to my wife and her cousin. You know what though? They both honestly had no problem with it. And nobody has ever referred back to it, even till this day. My wife is Russian, and she is certainly a keeper. I got the best end of the deal in this marriage. I'll see you when I make my next episode. Until that time, пока.